The map burned cold in Lyra Bennett's pocket as she sprinted through the rain-soaked streets of Prague, her breath coming in ragged gasps that fogged the November air. Behind her she could hear nothing but her own footsteps and the hammering of her heart, yet every instinct screamed that she was being followed, that stealing from a vampire lord's estate had signed her death warrant in blood she hadn't yet spilled. She ducked into an alley, pressing herself against the wet brick wall, trying to calm her breathing enough to think. The sealed parchment she'd lifted from the study felt impossibly heavy now, its wax seal bearing a crest she recognized from her grandfather's journals, a raven clutching a crimson moon. He'd died searching for what this map promised. The location of the Bloodstone Gate, the legendary portal between the human realm and the vampire court that existed beneath the city like a second shadow world. Her grandfather had believed the gate held answers about her family's curse, the strange visions that plagued Bennett women, the way they could sometimes see beyond the veil between worlds. Foolish girl. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, smooth as silk dragged across a blade. Did you truly believe you could walk into Castellan's estate and walk out again? Lyra's blood turned to ice. She spun, her back still to the wall, and found him standing at the mouth of the alley where nothing had been seconds before. He was exactly as the legends described, tall and impossibly graceful, with hair white as fresh snow falling past his shoulders and skin like marble in moonlight. His eyes held a crimson gleam that seemed to burn even in the darkness, and he wore black modern clothes that somehow still conveyed centuries of aristocratic breeding. This was no ordinary vampire. The power radiating from him made her knees weak. "I don't know what you're talking about," she lied, her voice steadier than she felt. He moved then, faster than her eyes could track, and suddenly he was inches away, his hand pressed against the brick beside her head, caging her in. She could smell something like winter storms and old books on him, nothing like the death she'd expected. Up close, his beauty was almost painful to look at. Sharp cheekbones, a cruel, elegant mouth, eyes that had witnessed centuries. "Your heart is racing like a trapped rabbit's," he murmured, his free hand reaching into her jacket pocket before she could stop him. He withdrew the map, holding it up between them. "And you're carrying stolen property that belongs to Lord Castellan. Or rather, belongs to me, since Castellan owes me rather significant debts." "You're not Castellan?" Lyra breathed. A smile curved his lips, revealing the sharp points of fangs. "I am Valerius Drăculești, king of the Northern Court, and you, little thief, have just stolen something I've been seeking for 300 years. The name hit her like a physical blow. Even humans who knew little of vampire politics knew that name, the vampire king who had united the feuding courts, whose word was absolute law in the shadow world, whose enemies disappeared without trace. She should be terrified. She was terrified, but she was also desperate. "Then we both want the same thing," she said quickly, before he could decide to simply kill her and be done with it. "That map leads to the Bloodstone Gate. My grandfather spent his life searching for it. He believed it held answers about my family, about why we can see things others can't. I need to find it." Valerius studied her with those ancient eyes, his expression unreadable. "You're a seer," he said finally. "It wasn't a question. Bennett line, if your accent and appearance are any indication. I knew your grandfather briefly decades ago. He had the same desperate look you do now. You knew him?" Hope flared in her chest. "Did he tell you anything? About what he was looking for?" "He told me he was trying to break a curse." Valerius's gaze intensified. "He believed that somewhere in the vampire realm lay the answer to why his daughter, your mother, I presume, was losing her mind to visions she couldn't control. He died before he could finish his search." Lyra's throat tightened. Her mother had died in an asylum 3 years ago, driven mad by the things she saw, the futures and past that bled together in her mind until she couldn't tell what was real. Lyra had started experiencing the same visions 2 years ago, gentle at first but growing stronger. She had maybe a year, possibly 2, before she ended up the same way. The map was her only hope. "Keep the map," she said, meeting his eyes even though every prey instinct in her body screamed to look away from a predator. "But take me with you. I can help. The Bennetts have records, knowledge about the gate that isn't written down anywhere. My grandfather taught me things before he died, or I could simply take what's in your head," Valerius said softly, dangerously. "I am old enough, powerful enough. I could sift through your memories like pages in a book." "You could," Lyra agreed, her voice barely above a whisper. "But then you'd have to trust that you found everything important, that you'd know which memory mattered. My grandfather spent 40 years studying this. Do you want to spend weeks sorting through 40 years of research in my mind, hoping you don't miss the crucial detail?" Something that might have been amusement flickered in his expression. "You're negotiating with me. Mortals generally either beg or run. I'm too desperate to beg and too tired to run," she said honestly. "And you haven't killed me yet, which means you're at least considering this." Valerius was quiet for a long moment, still impossibly close, his presence overwhelming. Finally, he stepped back, giving her space to breathe. Castellan will have alerted the other courts by now. You've become a liability and a target. If I'm seen helping a human thief, it will be viewed as weakness. Then don't help me, Lyra said quickly. Guide me. Let me be your translator, your researcher. Make it look like you're using me, not helping me. His eyes gleamed with something that might have been approval. Dangerous proposition, little seer. The vampire courts are not kind to humans, especially not in the deep places beneath the city where we're going. They will see you as food at best and insult at worst. I don't have a choice, Lyra said simply. In a year, maybe less, I'll be mad. Dead not long after. If there's even a chance the gate holds answers, I have to try. Valerius studied her face for what felt like an eternity. Then he held out his hand, palm up, a strangely formal gesture. Then we have an accord, Lyra Bennett. I will guide you through the vampire realm to the Bloodstone Gate. In exchange, you will share everything your family knows about its location and purpose. And you will do exactly as I say, without question, because one mistake in the courts below will mean both our deaths. She placed her hand in his without hesitation. His skin was cool, his grip firm, and she felt a strange tingle where they touched, like static electricity or recognition. Agreed, we leave tonight, he said, still holding her hand. Castellan will come for you at dawn, and I'd rather not deal with that particular headache. Can you be ready in 2 hours? I'm ready now. Everything I care about fits in a backpack. Something shifted in his expression, surprise perhaps, or understanding. He released her hand slowly. Meet me at the Charles Bridge, eastern side, at midnight. Don't be late, and don't tell anyone where you're going. As of this moment, you're under my protection, which makes you both the safest and most endangered human in Prague. Before she could respond, he was gone, vanished into shadow as if he'd never been there at all. Lyra stood in the alley for a long moment, her hand still tingling where he'd held it, trying to process what had just happened. She'd been caught, confronted by a vampire king, and somehow walked away alive with exactly what she wanted. It felt too easy. It felt like she'd just made a deal that would cost more than she understood. But she'd meant what she said. She didn't have a choice. Madness or death were her only futures otherwise. At least this way, she had a chance. Lyra returned to her tiny rented room above a bookshop, gathering her few possessions with practiced efficiency. Her grandfather's journals, carefully preserved and encoded. Her mother's last letter, written during a moment of clarity. A few changes of clothes, the silver knife her grandfather had given her, its blade etched with symbols he'd never explained. She strapped it to her thigh beneath her jeans, feeling slightly ridiculous and also slightly safer. At 11:30, she left the room for the last time, leaving the key on the table with the rent money she owed. The landlady would find it in the morning and think nothing of another traveler moving on. By then, Lyra would be somewhere beneath the city. In a world humans weren't meant to see, the streets were quieter now, the rain reduced to a fine mist that haloed the streetlights. Lyra walked toward the Charles Bridge, her backpack light on her shoulders, her heart heavy with the weight of what she was about to do. Prague at night was beautiful, all Gothic spires and ancient stone, and she wondered if she'd ever see it from the surface again. Valerius was waiting exactly where he'd said, standing near one of the bridge's Baroque statues like he was part of the artwork, eternal and untouchable. He'd changed into clothes that looked more fitted for where they were going. Dark trousers and a long coat that swirled around his boots, all of it expensive and perfectly tailored. His white hair was tied back now, revealing the sharp lines of his face. Punctual, he observed as she approached. I appreciate that. I appreciate not dying, Lyra replied. Where do we go from here? Instead of answering, he held out his hand again. The entrance to the vampire realm is nearby, but you won't be able to find it on your own. The wards against human sight are too strong. You'll need to maintain physical contact with me to pass through. Lyra took his hand without hesitation this time. Ignoring the same strange tingle of recognition, his fingers closed around hers, and suddenly the world looked different. The mist seemed to glow with silver light, and she could see patterns in the air itself, like veins of luminescence connecting everything. The statues on the bridge moved slightly, their stone eyes following them. Don't look at them, Valerius said quietly, noticing her attention. The guardians don't like being acknowledged. He led her off the bridge, down stone steps she could have sworn weren't there before, descending beneath the river's edge. The stones beneath her feet were ancient, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, and the air grew colder as they went deeper. Lyra's sight began to kick in, showing her glimpses of other times vampire nobles in historical dress, walking these same steps, blood on stone, ceremonies in darkness. She squeezed Valerius's hand tighter, using it as an anchor to the present. The visions are stronger here, she said, her voice echoing strangely. You're between worlds now, he explained. The Bloodstone Gate isn't in the vampire realm, it's the threshold between realms. Your sight will be more active the closer we get. They reached a door that seemed to be made of shadow itself, with the same raven and crimson moon crest carved into the darkness. Valerius placed his free hand against it, and Lyra felt power surge through him, ancient and immense. The door opened silently, revealing a corridor that stretched impossibly far, lit by floating orbs of pale blue light. "Welcome to the deep courts," Valerius said. "Stay close to me. Speak only when spoken to, and remember you're here as my researcher, which means you're valuable but also expendable. If another vampire challenges your presence, don't defend yourself. I will handle it. And if they challenge you," his smile was sharp, "then they'll remember why I'm king." They walked through corridors of breathtaking beauty, all carved stone and soaring arches like a Gothic cathedral built underground. But there were wrongnesses too, doors that led nowhere, staircases that climbed into darkness, and the occasional smear of old blood that no one had bothered to clean. They passed other vampires, all with that same pale hair and regal bearing, who stopped to stare at Lyra with undisguised hunger or curiosity or disdain. None approached, though, deterred by Valerius's presence beside her. "How many vampires live down here?" Lyra whispered. "In Prague alone, perhaps 3,000. Throughout the world, maybe 500,000. We're not common, and we're not immortal despite what legends say. We can be killed, though it's difficult. We age more slowly than humans, but we do age. I'm nearly 800 years old, which is ancient even by our standards." 800 years. Lyra tried to wrap her mind around it and failed. What was it like 800 years ago? "Brutal," he said simply. "More honest, perhaps. Humans feared us openly then, and we didn't pretend to be anything other than what we are. Now we hide, we blend, we maintain the fiction that we're myths. It's safer, but hollow." There was something wistful in his tone, and Lyra found herself studying his profile, the sharp aristocratic features, the ancient eyes. What did the world look like to someone who had watched 8 centuries pass? How many people had he loved and lost? How lonely was eternity? "Here," Valerius said, stopping before a massive set of double doors guarded by 2 enormous vampires in formal armor. "The Court of Lords. I need to present you formally, establish your protection under my name. This will not be pleasant, but it's necessary." The guards opened the doors without being asked, revealing a vast hall that took Lyra's breath away. It was like something from a Renaissance painting, vaulted ceilings covered in frescoes, marble columns, and hundreds of vampires gathered in clusters, all dressed in varying styles from across centuries. At the far end, on a raised dais, sat 7 figures in ornate chairs that could only be described as thrones. "The 7 lords," Valerius murmured. "They rule the courts under my authority. Right now they're wondering why I've brought a human into their hall." Every vampire in the room had turned to look at them. The weight of hundreds of predatory gazes made Lyra's knees weak, but Valerius's hand in hers remained steady. He walked forward with absolute confidence, and she forced herself to match his pace, to keep her chin up even though she wanted to bolt. They stopped before the dais. Valerius didn't bow, didn't show any deference, and Lyra realized with a jolt that he outranked everyone here. These were lords, but he was their king, Valerius. The vampire who spoke was female, elegant in a deep red gown, with hair like spun moonlight and eyes like chips of amber. "You bring a human to our hall. This requires explanation, Lady Seraphine," Valerius acknowledged. "I bring a seer, descendant of the Bennett line, as my researcher. We hunt the Bloodstone Gate together." A ripple of shock went through the assembled vampires. One of the other lords, a male with a scarred face and military bearing, leaned forward. "The gate is legend, Valerius. You waste your time and hours with fantasies. I have the Castellan map," Valerius said calmly. He released Lyra's hand long enough to produce the sealed parchment. Sealed by Castellan himself 300 years ago, detailing the gate's location. If it's legend, then someone went to great lengths to document a fantasy. And the human? This from another lord, younger looking but with ancient eyes. "Why does she live?" "Castellan has already sent word that she's a thief." "She's under my protection," Valerius said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. "Which means anyone who touches her answers to me. Are we clear, Lord Kieran?" Kieran inclined his head slightly, backing down, but his eyes on Lyra promised trouble later. Lady Seraphine stood from her throne, descending the steps with fluid grace. She stopped in front of Lyra, looking her up and down like examining a specimen. "A seer! How fascinating! Tell me, child, what do you see when you look at me?" Lyra glanced at Valerius, who gave the barest nod. Permission to speak. She met Seraphine's amber eyes and immediately wished she hadn't. Her sight opened like a floodgate, showing her a woman in medieval dress, covered in blood, standing over bodies. A younger Seraphine laughing in moonlight. Seraphine weeping beside a grave. Centuries of life compressed into heartbeats. "I see a woman who has survived when survival was impossible," Lyra said carefully. "Who has lost more than most humans ever have. Who is very, very tired." Seraphine's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. "Perhaps she is useful after all, Valerius. Very well, she may stay under your protection. But if she causes problems, her blood is forfeit." "Understood," Valerius said. One more thing. The voice came from the shadows beside the thrones, and a figure emerged that made every vampire in the room tense. He was different from the others. His hair was darker, almost silver rather than pure white, and his presence felt wrong, like nails on a chalkboard. The human smells of Bennett blood. The last Bennett who came here made promises he didn't keep. Perhaps his granddaughter should pay those debts. Malaki, Valerius said, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Lyra Bennett is not responsible for her grandfather's dealings, and she is under my protection, which you would do well to remember. Malachi smiled, showing too many teeth. Of course, my king. I would never dream of challenging your authority. I simply thought it worth mentioning that old debts sometimes carry forward through bloodlines. They don't, Valerius said flatly. Not in this case. Is there anything else? Or are we finished here? Lady Seraphine waved a dismissive hand. Go, Valerius, hunt your legends. Just don't start a war with Castellan over a human thief. Valerius took Lyra's hand again, turning to leave. They were halfway to the doors when Malachi's voice drifted after them. Good hunting, little seer. Try not to go mad before you find what you're looking for. Lyra forced herself not to react, not to show how those words struck home. She kept walking beside Valerius until they were out of the hall and back in the corridors, away from the weight of all those eyes. What did my grandfather promise them? She asked as soon as they were alone. Valerius's jaw was tight. Information. He claimed he could find the gate, that he could open it. In exchange, the courts gave him access to their archives, their knowledge. When he died before fulfilling his end, some felt cheated. Malachi in particular has a long memory for grudges. Will he be a problem? Potentially. Malachi is old, almost as old as I am, and powerful. He's also ambitious and resentful that I rule rather than him. He'll use you as a weapon against me if he can. I'm sorry, Lyra said quietly. I didn't mean to make your life more complicated. Valerius stopped walking, turning to face her. Lyra, you offered me the first real lead on the Bloodstone Gate in 3 centuries. Complications are acceptable. But you need to understand something. We're bound together now in the eyes of the court. Your actions reflect on me. My protection of you reveals my priorities. There will be vampires who see that as weakness, who will try to exploit it. You need to be careful. Why do you want to find the gate? She asked, suddenly curious. What's worth 300 years of searching? His expression shuddered. That's not your concern. We're bound together, you just said so. I think it is my concern. For a moment she thought he'd refuse to answer. Then he sighed, and in that small sound she heard the weight of centuries. I'm looking for someone. Someone who crossed through the gate 200 years ago and never returned. The gate is the threshold between the vampire realm and the human world, but it's also a doorway to other places, realms we don't fully understand. Places where even vampires can get lost. Someone you loved, Lyra said softly. His eyes met hers, and for the first time she saw real pain in them. Someone I failed to protect. If the gate still functions, if I can open it and understand how it works, perhaps I can find her. Or at least know what happened. Her name? Isadora. The name came out like a prayer, like grief. Her name was Isadora, and she was curious and brilliant and convinced she could master the gate's magic. She went through one night while I was away on court business. When I returned, she was gone. All that remained was a note saying she'd found something wonderful and would return soon. That was 200 years ago. Lyra's heart ached for him. 200 years of searching, of hoping, of not knowing. I'm sorry. I understand what it's like to lose someone to forces you can't control. My mother, my grandfather, both lost to things I couldn't fix. Valerius studied her for a long moment, and something passed between them, a recognition of shared pain, of parallel grief. Then we both have reasons to find the gate, he said finally. Come, we should rest before we continue. The journey ahead will require all our strength. He led her through more corridors to a chamber that was clearly his personal space, elegant and spare, with books lining the walls and a massive window that somehow showed the night sky despite being underground. Lyra stared at the window in confusion. Magic, Valerius explained, seeing her expression. The glass shows what's happening on the surface. I find I miss the stars sometimes after so many centuries. The vulnerability in that admission struck her. This ancient, powerful being missed the stars. She walked to the window, looking up at the night sky, and felt him move to stand beside her. How does the map work? She asked. Have you had a chance to study it? He produced the sealed parchment. Not yet. The seal is complex. It requires blood to open, but not just any blood. It needs blood from someone who seeks the gate with pure intent. What does that mean? I'm not certain. Old vampire magic is more art than science, based on intent and emotion rather than simple formulas. We'll need to try it and see what happens. Do it now, Lyra said. We're both here. One of us must have pure enough intent. Valerius hesitated, then drew a small knife from his coat. He pricked his finger, letting a drop of blood fall on the wax seal. Nothing happened. He looked at Lyra. Your turn. She held out her hand, trying not to flinch when he made a small cut on her fingertip. The pain was sharp but brief. She pressed her bleeding finger to the seal, and immediately the wax began to glow, red light spreading through its veins like fire. The seal cracked, falling away, and the parchment unrolled itself in Valerius's hands. The map was beautiful, drawn in inks that seemed to shift in the light, showing not just the physical layout of the vampire realm but layers of magical significance. Lyra could see more than was physically present. The map resonated with her gift, showing her glimpses of what it described. "It's beneath the oldest part of the castle," Valerius breathed, tracing lines with his finger. "The original fortress that stood here before the city existed. There's a chamber, hidden, that serves as the gate's anchor point in this realm." "Your finger is still bleeding," Lyra said suddenly, noticing red drops falling on the map. Where the blood hit the parchment, new lines appeared, more detailed than before, showing a path. "Your blood too," Valerius said. Lyra's cut was still bleeding, slower than his, and where their combined blood touched the map it came alive, three-dimensional images rising from the page, showing them a rotating view of the chamber they sought. "Blood of the Seeker and Blood of the Seeker," Valerius said, reading words that appeared in the map's margin. "Two must approach with shared purpose for the gate to wake." "Convenient that there are two of us," Lyra said, "or designed that way. The gate is older than any vampire alive today. Its creators understood that important journeys shouldn't be taken alone. They studied the map together for hours, memorizing the path, the warnings written in ancient scripts that Valerius translated. The chamber was deep, deeper than any part of the vampire realm currently in use. They would have to pass through abandoned sections, dangerous territories where old magic still lingered, and not all vampires were bound by the current king's law. "We should rest," Valerius said finally, when the night had grown late even by vampire standards. "You're exhausted. I can hear your heart working harder than it should." Lyra realized he was right. Adrenaline had carried her this far, but she was crashing now, her body demanding sleep. "Where should I?" "The bed is yours," he said, gesturing to the large four-poster against one wall. "I don't sleep as humans do. A few hours of dormancy is all I require, and I can take it anywhere." "I can't kick you out of your own bed," Lyra protested. "You're not kicking me anywhere. I'm offering. Take it." Too tired to argue, Lyra removed her boots and jacket, keeping her jeans and shirt on, and climbed into the bed. The mattress was impossibly comfortable, the blankets heavy and soft. She watched as Valerius settled into a chair by the window, his eyes on the stars, and felt a strange sense of safety despite being surrounded by vampires who would happily drain her dry. "Valerius," she said quietly. "Yes? Thank you for helping me, for not killing me in that alley." He turned his head, his eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. "Thank you for giving me the first hope I've had in decades, Lyra Bennett. Sleep now. Tomorrow we hunt the impossible." She closed her eyes, and despite everything, sleep claimed her almost instantly. Lyra woke to find Valerius standing by the bed, looking down at her with an unreadable expression. For a moment panic flared. She was vulnerable, asleep in a vampire's bed, but his eyes held nothing predatory, only something like concern. "You were dreaming," he said quietly, calling out warnings. "Another vision?" She sat up, trying to remember. "I saw the path we need to take, saw it ending in blood and darkness. I couldn't tell if we succeeded or failed." "Visions of the future are always uncertain," Valerius said. "They show possibilities, not certainties. We'll be careful." He handed her a cup of something that smelled like coffee and turned out to be exactly that, prepared perfectly. "How did you know how I take my coffee?" "I didn't, I guessed. Was I close?" "Perfect, actually." A slight smile crossed his face. "I've had centuries to learn how to read people. Your grandfather drank his coffee the same way. I assumed it was a family trait." They prepared to leave, gathering supplies, a pack with water and food for Lyra, weapons for them both, and the map sealed safely in Valerius's inner coat pocket. He gave her a cloak that somehow made her look less obviously human, the dark fabric shimmering with what she suspected was protective magic. "Stay close," he instructed as they left his chambers. "We're going into the deep warrens, sections of the realm that haven't been maintained in centuries. Old vampires sometimes retreat there when they grow tired of court politics. They're not always stable." The journey down was like descending through layers of history. The elegant halls gave way to rougher corridors, then to tunnels barely large enough for them to walk side by side. The magical lights became fewer and farther between, until Valerius had to create his own light, a pale orb that floated ahead of them. Lyra's sight was in constant flux here, showing her overlapping images of different times, vampires in armor, in ancient robes, in modern clothes, all using these same tunnels across centuries. "What do you see?" Valerius asked, noticing her expression. "History. Layers of it. These tunnels have been used for so long the past bleeds through. Can you see forward? See what's ahead of us?" She tried, focusing her gift, and gasped as vision slammed into her, a fork in the tunnel, one path ending in collapse, another in a chamber where something old and hungry waited. "Left at the next junction," she said. "Right leads to a cave-in, and something ahead, something that's aware we're coming." Valerius's hand went to the sword at his hip, an elegant blade that looked ceremonial but Lyra suspected was anything but. Can you tell what it is? Old, so old and angry. It doesn't like that the king walks these tunnels. Wonderful, Valerius muttered, but he kept moving forward with confidence. They took the left path and Lyra's visions proved accurate to the right. They glimpsed a collapsed section, ancient stones fallen. The tunnel opened into a chamber that had once been beautiful, with carved pillars and a ceiling painted with stars. Now it was decayed, the paintings faded, and in the center sat a figure that made Lyra's breath catch. He was ancient, his white hair matted and wild, his elegant features twisted with age and madness. But he wore the remnants of noble clothes and power radiated from him like heat from a forge. When he looked up at them, his eyes were solid black. King, the old vampire hissed. King comes to the depths. Why? Why disturb old Demetrius in his solitude? Demetrius, Valerius said, and Lyra heard recognition in his voice. You were a lord once, Seraphine's brother. They said you died 200 years ago. Died, yes. Dead, no. Demetrius laughed, a sound like cracking bones. Demetrius went mad instead. The sight came to him, gift of blood shared with the seer long ago. Now he sees too much, sees everything, sees all times at once. Is this death or life? Lyra stepped forward before Valerius could stop her. You have the sight, you're like me? Those black eyes fixed on her. Little seer, Bennett blood. Yes, yes, Demetrius sees you. Sees your grandmother, your great-grandmother, all the Bennett women stretching back through time. Sees your madness coming like a storm. Sees he stopped, tilting his head. Sees you with the king, sees blood and fire, sees the gate opening, sees death, sees life, sees everything between. The gate, Valerius said sharply. What do you see about the gate, Demetrius? Not for you the gate, not for you alone. Two seekers, bound by blood and purpose, open together or not at all. But beware, beware, Demetrius suddenly lunged forward with impossible speed, grabbing Lyra's wrist. His grip was ice cold, his strength tremendous. The gate demands payment, the gate demands sacrifice. What will you give, little seer, to save your mind? What will you give, king, to find what's lost? Valerius moved, his sword drawing and stopping at Demetrius's throat in one fluid motion. Release her, truth only, truth always. But Demetrius let go, shuffling back to his corner. Go, go, follow the map, find the chamber, but remember gates open both ways. What goes through may come back and what's on the other side may come through. They backed out of the chamber carefully, neither turning their back on the mad vampire until they were well into the next tunnel. Lyra's wrist ached where he'd grabbed her, and she'd swear she could still feel the cold of his touch. Are you all right? Valerius asked, taking her hand gently and examining her wrist. Bruises were already forming in the shape of fingers. I'm fine. He was trying to warn us, I think. Valerius. He said the sight came to him through blood shared with a seer. What did he mean? Exactly what it sounds like. Vampires can take on aspects of those they drink from, especially if the blood is given willingly in significant quantities. If Demetrius fell in love with a seer, shared blood bond with her, he might have absorbed some of her gift. But vampires aren't to see as humans do. It drove him mad. Will that happen to me? The madness? Valerius stopped walking, turning to face her fully. Not if we find the gate and understand its purpose. Your grandfather believed the Bennett site was tied to the gate somehow, that your bloodline was marked by it centuries ago. If that's true, then perhaps the gate itself holds the cure to the madness. And if it doesn't? His expression was serious, his eyes locked on hers. Then we'll find another way. I've spent 200 years searching for lost answers. I won't stop now, not for either of us. The conviction in his voice made her chest tight. When had this stopped being just a bargain between them? When had he started to care about her survival as much as his own quest? They continued deeper, following the map's guidance. The tunnels grew stranger, walls carved with symbols that hurt to look at, floors that seemed to shift beneath their feet, doorways that led nowhere. Lyra's sight was in constant flux, and she found herself gripping Valerius's hand more for grounding than guidance. We're close, he said, checking the map. The chamber should be just ahead. The tunnel ended at a door unlike any they'd encountered, massive and seamless, made of what looked like black glass. The raven and crimson moon crest was carved deep into its surface, and when Lyra looked at it with her sight, she saw it as a living thing, breathing with ancient power. The seal requires blood again, Valerius said, studying the door's surface. Not just any blood, the blood of two seekers freely given and combined. Like on the map, Lyra said. She held out her hand without hesitation. Together then. Valerius drew his knife, made fresh cuts on both their palms. They pressed their bleeding hands together, fingers intertwining, and then placed their joined hands against the door's center. Their blood ran down the black glass, and where it touched, the crest began to glow. Power surged through them, through the connection of their clasped hands, and Lyra gasped at the intensity of it. She could feel Valerius in that moment, 800 years of memory and pain, love and loss, the weight of being king and the loneliness of immortal existence. And she knew somehow that he could feel her too, her fear of madness, her grief for her mother, her desperate hope that she could break the curse that haunted her bloodline. The door opened silently, revealing a chamber that stole Lyra's breath. It was vast, the ceiling lost in shadow far above, and the walls were covered in writing thousands of languages from thousands of years, all describing the same thing, the gate. In the center of the chamber stood an arch of dark stone, intricate carvings covering every surface, and within the arch, nothing, just empty air that somehow felt full, like looking at a space where reality was thinner. "The Bloodstone Gate," Valerius breathed, and Lyra heard awe in his voice. They walked toward it slowly, their joined hands still bleeding, still connected. As they approached, the gate began to respond, light flickering in the empty archway, colors that had no names, sounds that weren't quite sounds. Lyra's sight exploded open, showing her vision so intense she would have fallen if Valerius hadn't steadied her. She saw the gate being built by vampires and humans working together, centuries before the split between their peoples. Saw it used as a bridge between realms for knowledge and exploration and wonder. Saw it sealed away when fear overcame cooperation, when humans and vampires came enemies instead of allies. Saw her own ancestor, a Bennett woman with sight like hers, placing the curse on her bloodline as price for the gate's sealing. Knowledge of the gate passed through generations, the ability to find it when it was lost, but at the cost of madness if the gate remained unopened. "I see it," she gasped. "Valerius, I see the truth. My ancestor helped seal the gate. She volunteered to carry the burden of its location in her blood, in her sight, but the magic was too strong. It was never meant to pass through so many generations. Each Bennett seer has been driven mad by knowledge they can't access, by the gate calling to them across centuries. The only way to break the curse is to unseal the gate, to fulfill the purpose my bloodline was meant for. Then we unseal it," Valerius said immediately. "How?" "The same way we've done everything else. Blood and purpose. Two seekers opening it together." They approached the arch, still hand in hand, and Lyra felt the gate's pull like gravity. It wanted to open, had been waiting to open. Their combined blood dripped onto the stone threshold, and writing began to appear in the air itself, words in a language even Valerius didn't recognize. "It's asking us to declare our purpose," Lyra said, understanding somehow. "To state why we seek to open it." Valerius spoke first, his voice strong. "I seek the gate to find what was lost, to understand what happened to Isadora, to bring her home or to know she's beyond saving. I open this gate in her name. I seek the gate to break the curse on my bloodline," Lyra said. "To end the madness that has claimed Bennett women for generations. To finish what my ancestor started. I open this gate in my mother's name, and my grandmother's and all those who suffered before them." The words hung in the air, and then the gate responded. Light flooded the archway, brilliant and terrible, and the empty space within became a window onto somewhere else. No, many somewhere elses layering over each other. Lyra saw 1,000 different realms, possibilities, pathways through existence itself. And somewhere in that chaos she saw a woman with white hair and bright eyes, trapped in a realm of endless twilight, calling out soundlessly. "Isadora!" Valerius's voice cracked with emotion. "She's alive. She's trapped, but she's alive." But even as they saw her, something else came through from the other side. Shadows that moved with terrible purpose, creatures that existed between realms, attracted by the gate's opening like moths to flame. They poured into the chamber, formless and hungry, and Lyra felt cold terror as they approached. "What are they?" she asked, pressing back against Valerius. "Gate shadows, things that exist in the spaces between worlds. The gate has been sealed so long, they've been waiting, gathering. We have to close it now. But Isadora, if those things get loose in the vampire realm, thousands will die. Lyra, we have to close it." She saw the agony in his face, the impossible choice. He'd found Isadora after 200 years, could see her clearly, and now he had to seal her away again to protect others. Without thinking, Lyra grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. "We're not closing it," she said. "We're going through, right now. Together." "What?" "Lyra, you could die, and if we close it again, I'll go mad. You've lost Isadora once already. I won't let you lose her again." She pulled him toward the gate, toward the brilliant chaos of light. "Trust me, please." For a heartbeat he hesitated. Then his hand tightened on hers. "Together then. Don't let go." They ran toward the gate as the shadows closed in behind them, and Lyra felt Valerius pull her close as they leaped through the archway. Reality shattered into colors and sounds and sensations she had no words for. She felt like she was being pulled apart and put back together, like she existed in 1,000 places at once, like time had no meaning. Through it all she held on to Valerius, and he held on to her, the only constant in infinite chaos. Then they were falling, tumbling through twilight air, and landing hard on ground that felt solid but wrong, like it was only mostly real. Lyra gasped for breath, trying to orient herself. They were in a forest of silver trees under a sky that held 2 moons, one red, one white. The gate stood behind them, solid and real, an anchor point in this strange realm. "Where are we?" Lyra asked. Between, Valerius said, helping her stand. We're in one of the between realms, spaces that exist outside normal reality. Isadora was researching these places before she disappeared. He looked around, his eyes searching. Isadora, I know you're here. Valerius? The voice came from the trees, disbelieving and full of wonder. A figure emerged, the woman they'd seen in the gate's vision, looking exactly as she must have 200 years ago, her white hair flowing and her eyes bright with intelligence and joy. Valerius, you found me. You actually found me. He was moving before Lyra could blink, pulling Isadora into his arms and holding her like he'd never let go. I thought you were dead. I thought I'd lost you forever. Time moves strangely here, Isadora said, pulling back to look at him. For me, it's been perhaps a year. I tried to return, but the gate closed behind me and I couldn't reopen it from this side. I've been searching for another way back. Her eyes moved to Lyra. And who is this, the seeker who helped you open the gate? Lyra Bennett, Valerius said, descendant of the Bennett seer line. Lyra, this is Isadora Drăculești. My friend, Isadora said gently, and Lyra heard something in her tone. Valerius and I were friends, colleagues. Never lovers, though many assumed otherwise. I'm sorry if you thought you loved her, Lyra said to Valerius, confused. I do, he said simply. But Isadora is right, it was never romantic love. She was my closest companion, the one person who understood what it meant to be curious and searching and never satisfied with easy answers. When she vanished, I lost my partner in every way but the romantic one. Relief flooded through Lyra, so strong it surprised her. When had she started caring whether Valerius loved someone else romantically? When had her feelings shifted from gratitude to something deeper? We need to return, Isadora said urgently. The gate shadows will have poured through by now. The vampire realm is in danger. We have to go back and close it properly, Valerius agreed. He looked at Lyra. Are you ready? The return might be even harder than coming through. As long as we're together, she said, and meant it. The three of them joined hands, Valerius in the center, Lyra and Isadora on either side, and approached the gate from this side. It looked different here, made of light instead of stone, but it was clearly the same structure. As they got closer, Lyra felt the connection with Valerius intensify, their blood bond still active, still linking them. The gate responds to purpose, Isadora explained. Coming through, you declared your purpose to open it. Now you must declare your purpose to master it. To control who and what can pass. I claim this gate in the name of breaking curses, Lyra said, understanding. I claim it to end suffering and madness. I claim it so that knowledge can flow without destroying those who carry it. I claim this gate in the name of reuniting what was lost, Valerius said. I claim it to restore friendships and partnerships. I claim it so that curiosity need not end in tragedy. And I claim this gate in the name of exploration tempered with wisdom, Isadora added. I claim it to bridge realms without endangering them. I claim it so that the between realms can be studied safely. The gate flared with brilliant light, and words appeared again in that ancient language. But this time Lyra could read them. 3 seekers with pure purpose claim the gate. 3 may command it, seal away danger, allow passage to those worthy, protect all realms from corruption. The light exploded outward, rushing back through the gate toward the chamber they'd left. Lyra felt the power surge through her, through Valerius, through Isadora, and then they were being pulled back through the gateway, drawn by the need to complete the claiming. They tumbled out into the chamber, which was chaos. The shadows had multiplied, and vampires had arrived, Lady Seraphine, Lord Kieran, and others fighting the creatures with magic and steel. Bodies lay on the floor, both vampire and human servants who must have been nearby when the attack began. Malachi stood near the gate, his hands raised in a spell, trying to close it and failing. Valerius! Seraphine shouted, relief flooding her face. Thank the blood, you're alive. We have to stand back, Valerius commanded, his voice carrying absolute authority. He raised his hands, still joined with Lyra's and Isadora's on either side. By right of claiming, by blood and purpose, I seal this gate against corruption. I command the shadows to return. The power that had surged through them before exploded outward, and the shadows screamed a sound like reality tearing. They were pulled back toward the gate, unable to resist, and one by one they vanished back through the archway. Lyra focused her sight, seeing the pathways they'd used, and helped guide them back to where they belonged. When the last shadow disappeared, the gate's light changed, no longer chaotic but steady and controlled. The archway now showed a specific view, the between realm they'd just left, stable and clear. It's safe now, Isadora said, lowering her hands. The claiming is complete. The gate will only allow passage to those the seekers approve, and it will reject anything that means harm to the realms it connects. Silence filled the chamber. Every vampire present stared at them, at Valerius with Lyra and Isadora, at the now controlled gate, at the bodies on the floor. Lady Seraphine approached slowly, her expression unreadable. You actually did it, she said. You found the gate, opened it, mastered it, and returned with Isadora alive. Valerius, you're either the bravest or the most foolish king we've ever had. Probably both, he said dryly. Then his expression grew serious. How many dead? 7 vampires, 3 human servants. It could have been far worse if we hadn't responded quickly. Seraphine's eyes moved to Lyra. The human seer saved us all, I understand. If you hadn't gone through and claimed the gate from the other side, we couldn't have sealed it. Lyra did more than that, Valerius said. She figured out how to break her family's curse. The Bennett site was tied to the gate. Now that it's open and claimed, the madness should end. Lyra focused inward, reaching for the constant pressure that had lived in her mind since the visions began. It was gone. The site remained, but the overwhelming chaos, the sense of drowning in other times, it had vanished. She could see clearly now, controlled and purposeful. It worked, she breathed. Valerius, it actually worked. He pulled her into an embrace without thinking, and Lyra realized she was crying, tears of relief streaming down her face. She wasn't going to go mad. She wasn't going to end up like her mother. The curse that had haunted her bloodline for centuries was finally broken. Well, Malachi's voice cut through the moment. How touching. The king saves the human, controls the gate, reunites with his lost friend, all very heroic. But there remains the matter of the chaos this caused. The deaths, the danger to the realm. Malachi, Valerius said, his tone dangerous. Choose your next words carefully. I merely point out that this human has been nothing but trouble since she arrived. She stole from Castellan, brought danger to the courts, and now 7 of our people are dead. Perhaps it's time for her to return to the surface world where she belongs. No. Valerius's voice was absolute. Lyra has proven herself a seeker of the gate. She has claimed it alongside Isadora and myself. She has right of passage through all vampire realms as a gatekeeper. That is my decree as king. You make her one of us for saving your friend? Malachi challenged. That sets dangerous precedent, Valerius. I make her one of us because she earned it. Valerius shot back. She risked her life to stop the shadows when she could have fled. She helped master the gate when it would have been easier to simply close it. She has proven courage, loyalty, and honor. Those are the qualities we claim to value in our society. If you have a problem with that, Malachi, you may challenge me for the crown. Here, now. The chair went silent. Challenging the king was within any vampire's right, but it was also a death sentence if the challenge failed. Malachi's eyes burned with rage, but he finally lowered his gaze in submission. No challenge, he said tightly. Not today. But this isn't over, Valerius. It never is with you, Valerius said tiredly. Dismissed, all of you. Clear the dead with honor. Seal this chamber until we determine how the gate should be guarded and managed. I'll address the full court tomorrow night. The vampires filed out slowly, some casting curious glances at Lyra, others looking at Isadora with joy at her return. Lady Seraphine lingered, approaching the 3 gatekeepers. My brother lives, she said quietly. Demetrius, we passed him on our way here. He's mad but alive. Did you? We saw him, Valerius confirmed. The sight drove him to madness. Perhaps now, with the gate properly opened and controlled, Lyra could help him. If Bennett's sight can be healed, perhaps Vampire's stolen sight can be managed too. I'll try, Lyra said. If he'll let me. Seraphine's eyes shimmered with what might have been tears. Thank you for everything you've done tonight. Valerius is right, you've earned your place among us. She turned to Isadora. Welcome home, sister friend. I've missed your terrible jokes and your constant questions. And I've missed your patience with my terrible jokes and constant questions, Isadora replied warmly. When they were finally alone in the chamber, standing before the now calm gate, Lyra felt exhaustion crash over her. The adrenaline that had sustained her was gone, and her body reminded her that she was only human, that she'd been awake too long and stressed too hard. Come, Valerius said gently. You need rest, real rest in safety. There are chambers prepared for Isadora she can settle in while I get you somewhere safe to sleep. I don't want to be separated, Lyra said, surprising herself with the admission. Not yet. I know that sounds clingy, but we're blood bonded now, Isadora said gently. I can see it, the connection between you. Opening the gate together, bleeding together, claiming it together, you've forged a bond that goes beyond simple alliance. You need to stay close until it settles, or the separation will be painful. How long does that take? Valerius asked, though he didn't sound displeased by the idea of staying close to Lyra. Days, usually. Sometimes weeks. It depends on the strength of the bond. Isadora studied them both with knowing eyes. Though I suspect this bond might be particularly strong. You care for her, Valerius, in a way you haven't cared for anyone in centuries. Is it that obvious? To someone who's known you for 600 years? Yes. Lyra's heart was pounding again. She looked up at Valerius, finding his eyes already on her. Do you care for me? Yes, he said simply. More than I should, probably. More than is wise for a vampire king and a human seer. But yes, Lyra Bennett, I care for you. You're brave and clever and stubborn in the best ways. You challenge me. You make me remember what it's like to hope for things I'd given up on. You make me want to protect you while simultaneously knowing you don't need protection. You need partnership. and that terrifies and delights me in equal measure. Lyra felt like her chest might burst. I care for you too. I didn't expect to, but somewhere between the alley and the gate and everything in between, I started falling for you. You're 800 years old and a vampire king and completely outside anything I ever imagined for my life. But you're also kind and wounded and searching, and I can't help but he kissed her. Gently at first, giving her every chance to pull away, then deeper when she made a soft sound of pleasure and wrapped her arms around his neck. His mouth was cool against hers, but passion warmed it quickly. She felt the blood bond between them flare to life, connecting them in ways beyond physical, and she knew he felt it too from the way he held her tighter. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Isadora was politely studying the gate with her back turned. "Well," she said without looking at them, "I'll just go find those chambers and leave you two to continue settling your bond. Valerius, I'll see you tomorrow evening." "Lyra, it was lovely to meet you, even under such dramatic circumstances." She left with a knowing smile, and Lyra found herself alone with Valerius in a chamber with an interdimensional gate, having just kissed a vampire king and liked it very much. "This is insane," she said, starting to laugh. "Yesterday I was a thief trying to survive. Today I'm a gatekeeper with a blood bond to vampire royalty." "And tomorrow?" Valerius asked, still holding her close. "Tomorrow I have no idea, but I'd like to spend it with you, figuring things out together." "I can arrange that," he said, and kissed her again. Over the following days they established a new rhythm. Lyra officially became one of the gatekeepers, studying the gate's magic with Isadora and learning how to control her sight properly. Valerius dealt with court politics, defending Lyra's position against those like Malachi who resented her presence. And in the stolen hours between obligations they grew closer, learning each other in ways both mundane and profound. Lyra discovered that Valerius loved music from all eras, that he read poetry when stressed, that he had a wicked sense of humor hidden beneath his kingly dignity. He learned that she was afraid of deep water, that she loved terrible puns, that she had a gift for understanding complex magical theory that usually took vampires decades to master. Their blood bond deepened naturally, until they could sense each other's emotions across distances, until Lyra sometimes dreamed Valerius's memories, until he found himself seeing glimpses of future possibilities through her sight. It should have been frightening, being so connected to another person. Instead it felt right, like two puzzle pieces finally finding their match. Malachi remained a problem, gathering supporters who believed humans had no place in vampire society. Castelzan demanded compensation for the stolen map, which Valerius paid in gold and magical artifacts to avoid further conflict. And the gate itself required constant monitoring, as creatures from the Between Realms occasionally tested its boundaries, curious about the connection to the vampire realm. But through it all, Lyra found herself happier than she'd ever been. She had purpose, community, and love she'd never expected to find. The curse that had haunted her family for centuries was broken. She'd sent letters to distant Bennett relatives, sharing what she'd learned, offering hope to any who might have inherited the site. 3 months after opening the gate, Lyra stood in Valerius's chambers, their chambers now. As she'd moved her few belongings in weeks ago and looked at herself in the mirror, she looked different, healthier, more confident. The constant fear in her eyes had been replaced by something else. Purpose, joy, love. "You're thinking too loudly," Valerius said, appearing behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. His reflection joined hers in the mirror, pale and ancient and beautiful. "What's troubling you?" "Nothing's troubling me, that's what I'm thinking about. For the first time in years, I'm not afraid. I'm not waiting for madness to claim me. I'm just happy." "Good," he murmured against her neck. "You deserve happiness, Lyra Bennett. So do you, Valerius Drăculești." "I have it," he said simply. "You gave it to me." She turned in his arms, looking up at him. "What happens now? Long term, I mean. I'm human. I'll age and die while you stay the same." "Have you thought about that?" "Every day," he admitted. "I've considered offering to turn you, to make you vampire, but that's an irreversible choice, and I want you to make it freely. When and if you're ready. Not because you feel pressured or afraid. What if I never want to be turned?" Pain flickered in his eyes, but his voice remained steady. "Then we'll have whatever time we have, decades if we're lucky. I've had 800 years, Lyra. If the rest of my existence consists of loving you for 40 or 50 years and then mourning you for centuries after, I'll consider it time well spent." She kissed him then, pouring all her emotions into it. "I love you," she said when they broke apart. "I'm not sure when it happened exactly, but I love you completely, impossibly." "I love you too," he replied, against all logic and centuries of knowing better. "I love you, Lyra Bennett, and I will continue loving you until stars burn out." That night, as they lay tangled together in his massive bed, Lyra felt the blood bond between them pulse with contentment. Through it, she could feel his love like a steady flame, warming her from the inside, and she knew he could feel hers just as clearly. "I think I will want to be turned," she said quietly into the darkness. Not now, I need more time to be sure, but eventually. I don't want to leave you alone again. You've had too much loneliness already. His arms tightened around her. Are you certain? Vampirism is forever, Lyra. No going back, I'm not certain yet, but I'm leaning toward yes, heavily. The idea of centuries with you, of not having to constantly fear death, of being able to truly be your partner and equal, it appeals to me. But I want to live some more as human first, visit my family's grave as myself, make peace with my mortal life before I leave it behind. Then that's what we'll do, Valerius said, however long you need. I'm not going anywhere. 6 months later, on the anniversary of the day they met, Valerius arranged something special. He took Lyra through the gate into one of the between realms that Isadora had mapped as safe. This one was a realm of eternal sunset, with golden light painting everything beautiful. A meadow stretched out before them, filled with flowers that existed nowhere else. I wanted somewhere that belonged just to us, Valerius explained. Somewhere neither fully your world nor mine, somewhere between where we could be simply ourselves. It's beautiful, Lyra breathed. Not as beautiful as you. He took her hands and she felt the blood bond surge with emotion. Lyra Bennett, I have lived for 800 years and I have never felt for anyone what I feel for you. You are my partner, my equal, my greatest unexpected gift. I know you need more time before making permanent decisions, but I want you to know whenever you're ready, whatever you decide, I will be here. If you choose to become vampire, I will guide you through the change and stand beside you for eternity. If you choose to remain human, I will cherish every moment we have and carry your memory forever. The choice is yours, always yours, but my love is constant. Tears streamed down Lyra's face. I'm ready, she said. I've thought about it constantly for months, and I'm ready. I want forever with you, Valerius. I want to be vampire, to be your partner in truth. I want to help guard the gate and explore the between realms and learn everything there is to know. I want centuries, not decades. I want forever. Are you certain? His voice shook slightly. Once done, I'm certain, completely. Turn me, Valerius, make me yours in every way. The ceremony was simple but profound. Isadora and Seraphine stood as witnesses, along with several other vampires who had become Lyra's friends over the months. Valerius cut his wrist, offering her his ancient blood, and she drank deeply, feeling it burn through her veins like liquid fire. Then he drank from her neck, their blood mingling, the change beginning. The transformation took 3 days. Lyra experienced them as a fever dream, pain and pleasure mixing, her body dying and being reborn. Through it all, Valerius never left her side, their blood bond keeping her anchored as her entire being remade itself. When she woke on the 3rd night, she was different. Stronger, faster. Her sight had intensified, showing her layers of reality she'd never perceived before. And she was hungry, terribly, achingly hungry. Here, Valerius said gently, offering her a crystal glass filled with blood. Drink slowly, let your new body adjust. The blood was ambrosia, better than anything she'd tasted as human. She drank greedily, feeling strength flood her. When she finally looked up, she caught sight of herself in the mirror and gasped. Her hair had turned white like all vampires. Her skin was pale as moonlight. Her eyes held a new gleam, not quite red like the oldest vampires, but touched with crimson at the edges. She looked like something from a Gothic painting, beautiful and dangerous and eternal. What do you think? Valerius asked quietly. I think I look like I finally belong, Lyra said. She tested her new body, standing and moving with a grace she'd never possessed before. I feel incredible. Strong, clear. The sight is so much more controlled now. That's one of the benefits of vampire sight, Isadora explained, entering the room. You can see without being overwhelmed by it. You'll be able to help others with the gift now. Teach them control. Demetrius, Lyra said, remembering. Can we help him now? We can try, Valerius said. If you're strong enough, I am. Over the following months, Lyra settled into her new existence. Being vampire was strange and wonderful. She missed sunshine, missed certain foods, but the trade-offs were worth it. She had strength and speed and centuries stretching ahead. She had Valerius, their blood bond now perfectly balanced between 2 vampires. She had Isadora as a friend and mentor. She had purpose as a gatekeeper. They did eventually help Demetrius, teaching him to control the sight that had driven him mad. It was slow work, but gradually the ancient vampire regained his sanity. Seraphine wept when her brother finally recognized her clearly for the first time in centuries. Malachi remained a thorn in their side, but his influence waned as Lyra proved herself again and again. She became known as the Seer Keeper, the gatekeeper who could navigate the between realms most safely because she could see the dangers before they manifested. Young vampires came to her for training. Human seers sought her out, hoping to learn control. The gate itself became a place of learning rather than fear. Under the 3 gatekeepers' supervision, controlled expeditions into the between realms became possible, expanding vampire knowledge and creating new alliances with beings from other realms. 5 years after her transformation, Lyra stood with Valerius on the Charles Bridge. Looking up at stars she could see clearly now, even through city light. Her life had become something she never could have imagined that desperate night when she'd stolen the map. "Do you ever regret it?" Valerius asked, reading her contemplative mood. "Choosing this life? Giving up your humanity?" "Never," she said honestly. "I chose love, I chose purpose. I chose forever with you. How could I regret that?" He pulled her close, and she rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the steady presence of their blood bond. Around them Prague slept, unaware of the vampire realm beneath its streets, unaware of the gate that connected worlds, unaware of the love story that had started with theft and ended with eternity. "I love you, Lyra Drăculești," Valerius murmured. She'd taken his name officially, a public declaration of their bond. It had caused some controversy in the courts, but Valerius was king, and his word was law. "I love you too, Valerius." "Forever, forever," he agreed. And there on the ancient bridge under the stars, two vampires bound by blood and love and purpose stood together, facing an eternity of possibilities. The gate was secured, the curses were broken, the lost were found, and love against all odds had triumphed over loneliness and fear. Their story had begun with theft and desperation, but it ended with belonging and joy. Lyra had expected dungeons and death when she was caught stealing. Instead, she'd found a partner, a purpose, and a love that would last centuries. Sometimes, she reflected, the best things in life came from the moments when everything seemed most hopeless. When you took the risk, made the leap, trusted the vampire king who offered to guide you into darkness. Because sometimes on the other side of that darkness, you found light you'd never imagined possible. The Bennett curse was broken. The Bloodstone Gate was mastered. And Lyra and Valerius had forever to explore the between realms together, to love each other, to build a life that bridged human heart and vampire strength. In the end, she got everything she'd sought and so much more she'd never known to want. The gate had demanded sacrifice, the sacrifice of her human life, her mortal limitations. But in return, it had given her eternity with the person who understood her completely. That night, they returned to their chambers beneath the city, to the life they'd built together. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, Malachi's schemes, gate management, court politics. But tonight was theirs, just two souls who had found each other against impossible odds. Lyra curled up next to Valerius as the sun rose somewhere above them, bringing the light they could no longer see but no longer needed. In the darkness of the vampire realm, they had found their own light in each other, and they had forever to bask in its glow.